In a small village lying next to a vast forest, there lived a poor woodcutter named Ethan Miller. Each day, from the break of dawn, Ethan carried his axe into the forest, chopping logs one by one, tying them into bundles, then hauling them to the market in exchange for a few coins. His shoulders were darkened by the sun, his hands hardened by relentless labor. Yet within his heart, there was never room for despair. When he returns to the crooked wooden house at the end of the village, he always finds Grace's gentle smile, the wife he loved with all his being. Grace was well known in the village for her gentleness and diligence. She owned no golden bracelets nor silk gowns, but her smile alone could warm even the coldest winter. Their home was small, with a patched straw roof that leaked when it rained, yet every night it glowed with the light of the fire. Husband and wife sat together, eating rice mixed with sweet potatoes, and still their hearts felt full. However, that peace did not escape the eyes of a man filled with schemes. In this village, no one failed to know Harold Greene, the wealthiest landowner of all. His fields stretched across the plains, his herds of cattle so vast that no one could count them. His clothes always sparkled, and wherever he sat, there were servants ready at his side. But beneath that shining exterior, Harold was infamous for his greed and arrogance, looking down on the poor as if they were nothing but dirt. One afternoon, as Ethan carried firewood home from the forest, he came upon Harold at a small slope. Harold sat astride his horse, blocking the path, a sneer etched on his face. "Ethan," Harold called, "you toil your whole life, yet all you earn are a few meager coins. When will you ever escape this pitiful poverty?" Ethan bowed his head and quietly walked on, offering no reply. He knew words would be useless, but Harold was not ready to let him go. Pulling the reins, he drew closer, his booming voice carrying down the path for all to hear. "I heard your wife, Grace, is beautiful. Such beauty buried in a shabby hut is a tragic waste. A woman like her belongs in a place worthy of her." At that moment, Ethan's heart throbbed in pain. He pressed his lips tightly together, his shoulders tensing as he fought to hold down his anger. He understood well that Harold's words were more than mockery. They were a dagger aimed directly at the fragile happiness of his marriage. That night, beside the fading glow of the fire, Grace noticed her husband restless and sleepless. She softly asked Ethan, "Is there something troubling you?" Ethan wrapped his arms around her, his voice low. "It is nothing. I feel a little tired today." Grace did not press further, but in Ethan's eyes, the shadow of Harold lingered, like a dark spectre waiting outside their door. In the days that followed, Harold began his games. He ordered his men to bring lavish gifts and place them right at Ethan's doorstep, then stood back to watch their reaction. The first time, it was a pair of silver-embroidered shoes. They gleamed so brightly, so finely crafted, that one could see their reflection in them. Grace was startled when she saw them. "Oh, these shoes. Why are they left at our door?" Ethan frowned, quickly carrying them away. But before he could burn them, Harold appeared, laughing loudly outside Ethan. "Your wife would look stunning in those shoes. Every woman desires fine shoes for the festival, to be admired by all. Or perhaps you are too poor, and she must remain barefoot forever." Grace blushed faintly, but her voice grew firm. "Harold, we are indeed poor, but that does not mean we accept what does not belong to us. Please take them back." Ethan looked at his wife, pride swelling in his chest, yet Harold only curled his lip and sneered. "As you wish. But poor and proud, I doubt you will hold on to that so-called love for long." Then he rode off, his laughter echoing down the road. When night came, Grace held her husband's hand. "Do not trouble yourself. To me, pretty shoes mean nothing. All I need is you." Ethan nodded, yet unease had already taken root in his heart. And as he feared, the very next day, Harold sent another gift, a silver bracelet that glittered brilliantly. Grace saw it with her own eyes, and for a fleeting moment her heart trembled, for never in her life had she touched anything so precious. Once more, Harold appeared, his voice as sweet as honey. "Grace, you deserve far more than this. With me, you would never worry about food or clothing." Grace trembled, stepping back. "Please do not insult me. I already have a husband." Harold smirked, declaring as though it were certain a husband as poor as Ethan. "What can that bring you? You refused the shoes, but this silver bracelet, I believe sooner or later, you will not be able to let it go." Then he left, the bracelet rolling on the porch behind him. That afternoon, Ethan returned to find his wife weeping with her face in her hands. Seeing the bracelet on the ground, he understood everything. Grace sobbed bitterly. "I refused him, but his words keep echoing in my mind. I fear one day I may falter." "Ethan." Ethan held her tightly, his voice choked with anguish. "Do not be afraid. I would rather die than let him take you away." In their little house, Grace's sobs mingled with the sound of the wind howling through the forest. But outside, Harold Greene had not finished. He wanted to prove that with wealth and power, he could seize anything, even the humble home of Ethan and Grace. And the next trial would be greater, fiercer than ever before. In the days that followed, Ethan Miller could not find a moment's peace in his heart. He knew very well that the wealthy landowner Harold Greene would not stop at a pair of shoes or a silver bracelet. And then, the very thing he feared came to pass. One afternoon, while Ethan was still laboring deep in the forest, Harold had his men deliver to the front of the Miller home a gift more dreadful than all the others, a massive, newly built wooden house with sturdy beams and a roof of red tiles that shone brightly across the corner of the village. Harold's servant declared with pride, "This is a favor that my master has prepared, especially for Lady Grace." The news spread quickly throughout the village. People gathered to see, whispering and murmuring. Many were both envious and curious. They muttered to each other, "Grace truly is too beautiful," which is why the wealthy man has acted this way. But how could Ethan ever stand against Harold? Grace stood frozen. She felt the piercing stares and whispers of the entire village, like hundreds of needles stabbing into her heart. At that moment, Harold appeared, draped in a shimmering brocade robe, his smile faint yet deliberate grace. "You have lived in that shabby old house for far too long. This new wooden house is considered a gift from me so that you may live a life more worthy of yourself. All you need to do is step through that door, and every hardship will vanish." Grace trembled, her heart stretched as if by unseen hands. In her ears echoed Harold's venomous whisper, "You deserve it all." That evening, Ethan returned to find the crowd gathered around the wooden house. He understood at once what had happened. Heat surged through his body, his hands clenched so tightly that blood seeped from his palms. He strode directly to stand before Harold, his voice deep but resolute. "Mr. Greene, take this house away." "We do not need it." Harold chuckled coldly, shaking his head. "Ethan, if you are poor, then admit you are poor. But you have no right to strip Grace of her future. How long do you think you can keep her?" Those words pierced both husband and wife like a blade. Grace turned away, unable to meet her husband's eyes. She had not betrayed him, but her heart wavered, a spacious, sturdy home that shielded from rain and wind. Had that not been the dream she had whispered countless times, night fell. In their shabby little house, the oil lamp flickered weakly as the two sat in silence. Ethan looked at his wife and saw her reddened eyes. He sighed. "Grace, you are still thinking about that house, aren't you?" Grace broke down, sobbing. "I know it is his scheme, but I am so weary." "Ethan, we endure the leaks and the drafts year after year. I only want a sound roof over our heads. I am sorry, but sometimes I feel disheartened and humiliated." Ethan sat motionless. He knew his wife was not wrong. Poverty had worn down both her body and her spirit. And Harold was cunning, striking precisely at that weakness. From that day, the atmosphere in the house grew heavy. Grace laughed less, sometimes even quietly reproached her husband. "If you were a little more capable, if life with you were a little less hard, I would not have to bear those scornful looks from others." Those words cut into Ethan's heart like salt rubbed into a wound. He did not blame his wife, only himself. He threw himself into the forest, working harder than ever. But a man's strength has its limits. Each day, he brought back only a few coins, nothing that could compare with the wealth Harold flaunted. Meanwhile, Harold never ceased changing his tactics. When he saw Grace hesitate, he sent gifts of cakes and fine cloth. When she avoided him, he declared openly before the villagers, "Grace is worthy of my protection. Ethan is destitute. Keeping her is nothing but selfishness." That proclamation stirred the village into restless gossip. Some even urged Grace to yield to Harold, to exchange hardship for prosperity. The pressure from outside left her all the more torn. Ethan, on the other hand, fell gradually into despair. No matter how he struggled, poverty clung to him. No matter how much he loved his wife, it was not enough to extinguish the temptations Harold spread before her. Within him, helplessness grew heavier by the day. One evening, as the cold wind howled through the cracks in their walls, Grace sat staring into the darkness. She spoke softly, yet each word struck Ethan like a hammer. "Ethan, if one day I grow weak, would you forgive me?" Ethan lifted his head, meeting her tear-filled eyes. He gave no answer, for in his heart, pain had already shattered beyond repair. The conflict had reached its peak. On one side was true love, poor but warm. On the other hand, wealth and grandeur are steeped in schemes. And Grace, the gentle woman, now seemed like a fragile leaf, whirling helplessly in the gusts between two opposing forces. Ethan knew if he could not find a way, he would lose everything. In those dark days, when all hope seemed to have run out, something strange happened. One night, as Ethan Miller returned from the forest exhausted, he heard a strange whisper in the wind. Amid the darkness of the woods, an old man with a long white beard appeared. His eyes shone with an unusual light, and his voice was deep, as if echoing from thousands of years ago. "Ethan, I have watched you work hard and live honestly, yet still suffer hardship. That greedy man will pay the price sooner or later. But to protect your home, you need more than just muscle." Then, the old man handed Ethan a small seed, glowing like a star. "Plant this in front of your porch. When you face the greatest danger, this tree will protect the truth." Ethan bowed in gratitude. In his heart, he was both surprised and fearful, but like a drowning man clutching a piece of wood, he treasured the seed. The next morning, he told Grace. At first, she only shook her head, thinking it was a dream born of exhaustion. But in the sincere gaze of her husband, she felt an unwavering faith. So the couple planted the seed together in front of their porch. Day after day, the seeds sprouted, growing unusually fast. Before long, it became a small tree with bright green leaves, giving off a gentle fragrance. Villagers passing by were curious, but no one could explain it. Meanwhile, Harold Greene continued to escalate his pressure. He hosted feasts and openly invited Grace to sit in the place of honor. He even arrogantly declared to the whole village, "I have given Grace a grand house, a silver bracelet, and fine shoes. She only needs to leave Ethan, and I will make her my wife." The villagers buzzed with gossip. Many began to believe Grace could not resist the power of wealth. Ethan felt suffocated with anger, but before he could react, Harold led a whole crowd to his house. "Today," Harold proclaimed loudly, "I will take Grace from this shabby home. Ethan, you are not worthy of keeping her." Grace stood behind the door, tears streaming down her face. She had no desire to leave her husband, but poverty, gossip, and the unbearable pressure made her tremble, unable to step outside. Just as Harold was about to storm in, the strange tree at the porch suddenly glowed. From within its trunk, white rays spread out, enveloping the little house. The villagers panicked and stepped back. Harold winced, raising his hand to shield his eyes. A voice echoed, deep and powerful, as if from the heavens and the earth. "Sincerity and love cannot be bought. The greedy will face retribution." Immediately, the silver bracelet, the shoes, and even Harold's massive wooden house turned into smoke and vanished into the wind. The villagers gasped, eyes wide and mouths agape. Harold was stunned, his face pale. He screamed, "No, my wealth." No one has the right to take it away, but his cries only deepened the villagers' contempt. They began to murmur. So all this time, he only used money to take what he wanted. Truly a bottomless, greedy man. Even heaven and earth will not tolerate him. Grace opened the door and stepped out, standing beside her husband. In her eyes now shone faith, without a trace of doubt. She held Ethan's hand tightly and whispered through tears, "Now I understand. No silver bracelet is more precious than loyalty, and no house is stronger than fidelity. I once wavered, but I am sorry. As long as I have you, I fear nothing." Ethan embraced his wife, his heart light as if a mountain had been lifted off his chest. In front of all the villagers, he lifted his head toward Harold and said firmly, "Mr. Greene, remember this money may buy many things, but it will never buy true love." Harold was speechless, unable to utter a word. He left in humiliation, his reputation ruined. From that day on, the strange tree at the porch continued to cast its shade. People called it the Tree of Loyalty. Anyone passing by would look at it and remind their children and grandchildren, do not let greed overshadow love. Ethan and Grace returned to their simple life. They were still poor, but their hearts overflowed with happiness. The villagers, after witnessing everything, began to treat them with genuine respect. The story ends with a clear lesson. Material wealth cannot defeat true love. The greedy will eventually face consequences, while those who remain faithful will always be protected by heaven and earth.